Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is an incredible video game. In addition to having an all-time protagonist in Ichiban Kasuga, it also features an absolutely epic and engrossing story and some of the most polished and addictive turn-based combat I've ever experienced in an RPG. And while all of that is extremely impressive on its own, there is something else about this game that ended up impressing me even more. The true star of the show here is the varied and vast amount of side content that Infinite Wealth provides. The Yakuza, and subsequently the Like a Dragon series, have always been known for ridiculous and zany side missions and minigames, but Infinite Wealth takes things to an unprecedented level. I mean, there are essentially 2 side modes here that could very well be their own games. So today, I want to spotlight some of my favorite side content in Infinite Wealth and talk about how these components all work together to make Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth one of my favorite RPGs of all time. Before we get into the 2 largest side modes, I want to paint the picture of just how delightfully ridiculous Infinite Wealth can be with a rapid-fire roundup of some of the minigames available here. First off, there's Mismatch, a side mode where the player must help lovable yet bumbling idiot Ichiban navigate the dating apps. After matching with someone, the player is tasked with choosing the perfect responses to say to said match, in the hopes that it eventually leads to them agreeing to meet up with Ichiban in person. At its core, this is a timing minigame, where you have to input your button commands quickly enough, otherwise Ichiban's message comes out as gibberish, which of course is a turn-off to any prospective match. This is an absurd minigame, yet one that might also feel strangely familiar to anyone, such as myself, who has had to suffer through the dating app experience throughout their life. The absurdly over-the-top triumphant celebration that Ichiban performs when securing a date especially resonated with me and had me laughing out loud, while simultaneously crying on the inside. If only securing dates with girls on Tinder was as easy as performing a few timing-based minigames. The real star of the show here, though, are Ichiban's voiceovers that occur throughout the minigame. Personal favorites of mine, including him saying "thank you for this blessing" when receiving a quote-unquote hot pick from his match, or his muttering of "I'm desperate" right as he asks his match to meet up with him. Mismatch is without a doubt one of the most bizarre yet hilarious minigames I've ever encountered in gaming. That's just the tip of the iceberg though. Another one of my personal favorites is Sicko Snap. In this Pokemon Snap inspired game, Ichiban is tasked with taking pictures of various sickos across Hawaii while he rides the trolley. The fact that Hawaii has so many muscular, almost nude men walking around the island is obviously concerning, but the gameplay here is pretty solid. The better pictures you take, the more points you get, and those points can then be redeemed for prizes afterwards. Very simple and very obviously inspired by Pokemon Snap, but this is another super fun, breezy distraction for the player to partake in. And then of course there's Crazy Delivery, a mini-game in which Ichiban takes up food delivery as a part-time gig and must bike around the beach delivering food to a variety of hungry customers. The delivery service prides itself on delivering food with style, for some reason, so Ichiban must provide all sorts of wheelies, flips, and 360s on his bike as he performs his deliveries so he can earn style points. It gets even crazier though, as the minigame eventually sees Ichiban riding his bike up buildings and dodging fire breathers as he rushes to meet his delivery quota. Again, it's ridiculous in all the best ways. These are just a few of the smaller minigames available. There's also karaoke, claw machines, a number of classic Sega arcade games, the list goes on and on. So where do all these fit into the larger Infinite Wealth experience? Why do we need these? Well, besides the fact that most of them are a blast to play, they also help to ensure that the game never takes itself too seriously. Infinite Wealth is meant to be a silly game, but that doesn't mean that the story itself isn't actually pretty dark. A lot of it has to do with a religious cult trying to kidnap and presumably murder a child. One of the main characters is fighting cancer and struggling with their mortality, and multiple people die throughout the adventure. There's some heavy stuff here. And while that material does pack a punch, it's hard to dwell on it too long when the player can follow up a heavy story beat by immediately hopping on the trolley and snapping some pics of a couple sickos. Now, some might criticize the cognitive dissonance at play here, but I for one loved it. It only added to the hilarity in my eyes. I remember at one point in the story, there was a particularly urgent moment where the party had to rescue a kidnapped party member. Time was of the essence. This person could be getting brutally tortured or could already be dead for all the team knew. But rather than rush to the rescue, I decided to knock back a couple beers with the party at the bar and then browse Mismatch for any girls who might be willing to meet up. Again, some might look at this as a negative, but for me, this only added to the wacky and nonsensical world of Infinite Wealth. As great as all those aforementioned minigames are, in terms of sheer content, they pale in comparison to Infinite Wealth's Sujimon content. Sujimon, as you might be able to guess from the name, are a spoof on Pokemon, except instead of monsters, they're people. And if this concept sounds absurd at face value, it's even crazier in execution. There are a lot of weird people in the Like a Dragon universe, but Sujimon are the weirdest of the weird. The story has Ichiban collecting and raising his own team of Sujimon and eventually taking on the Discreet Four and becoming the Sujimon League champion. Rather than try to hide references to the Pokemon source material, the game instead leans into them, making this the most hilariously blatant Pokemon ripoff of all time. There are direct references to the Pokemon anime. The music that plays when Ichiban's team of Sujimon win a battle is very clearly inspired by music from the Pokemon video games. And there's even a Professor Oak-like figure who sends Ichiban on his quest to begin with. Unfortunately, the Sujimon battles themselves aren't super engaging or strategic. They play out as 3-on-3 battles, which is cool, but once I got my hands on a powerful Sujimon, I was quickly able to blow through everyone and become the champion just by leveling him up and spamming his one move. Despite that though, the mode still provides hours of content and some of the funniest moments in the entire game. Beyond that though, it also acts as an interesting dichotomy for one of the game's main themes. Like many other JRPGs, Infinite Wealth leans very heavily into the whole power of friendship thing. Personally, I love the hokiness of it. Ichiban yelling, "Witness the true power of friendship," as he enacts his ultimate move in battle never gets old for me, but I can see how that sort of thing could make some people roll their eyes. The contrast between that theme and the Sujimon content is hilarious. The professor constantly tells Ichiban how he will need to strengthen his bond with his Sujimon and continue to grow closer with him throughout his adventure, kind of echoing the whole power of friendship thing we see in the main game. However, like any other person would react in this situation, Ichiban is completely weirded out by the whole thing. Like much of the other content in Infinite Wealth, the concept of a Sujimon is completely insane. You want me to raise these grown men to fight for me in an underground gambling ring? You want me to physically pet them to grow my bond with them? And in the event that I catch multiple of the same species, you want me to feed one to the other to strengthen him? These are all things that the Sujimon content has the player doing, and for basically the only time in the entire game, Ichiban is completely weirded out and turned off by the things happening around him. Not only does this provide some of the game's funniest moments, but it also provides a brief glimpse into how a normal person would act if thrown into the absurdity of the world of Infinite Wealth. Well, at least a little. I mean, Ichiban still does go along with things and becomes the Sujimon League champion, but it's still funny to see his reactions to the absurdity of the events happening around him. Now we come to the crown jewel of Infinite Wealth side content, Dondoko Island. Just as Sujimon wears its Pokemon inspiration on its sleeve, Dondoko Island does the same for its Animal Crossing inspiration. In this mode, Ichiban must help restore an island retreat to its former glory and eventually earn a 5-star rating for the resort. This is easily the meatiest of all the side content in the game, taking around 10 hours just to finish the primary story, but it kept me highly entertained the entire time. In order to raise the rating of Dondoko Island, the player must clear out all the trash from the island while building housing and other attractions for prospective visitors, while also battling a gang of trash pirates who are determined to continue to pollute the island and keep his rating in the gutter. So don't worry, the inclusion of trash pirates here, as well as some of the other eccentric characters, I mean, look at this guy, help to ensure that this mode retains the absurdity of the other aspects of Infinite Wealth. In typical Animal Crossing fashion, this mode also has the player catching bugs and fish, upgrading and decorating Ichiban's house, and farming all sorts of resources for building new furniture and island attractions. It's an incredibly addicting gameplay hook that I found very hard to break away from after I got started, And luckily, spending time at the island directly ties into the main adventure as well, as the player is able to earn money at a pretty good rate once they start housing visitors at the island. In addition to tying seamlessly into the main adventure and providing hours upon hours of content, Dondoko Island also helps to underscore the importance of customization in this sort of game. Customizing your build and party is integral to any good RPG, and that's no different in Infinite Wealth. The variety of different party characters, weapons, and gear, coupled with a very deep job system, ensures that your party will be uniquely your own, and that's part of what makes Infinite Wealth so addicting. Dondoko Island, though, takes this level of customization to the next level, giving you an entire island to make all your own. A couple hours into the Dondoko Island story, I was shocked when out of nowhere the game introduced the capability to share my island with others online, as well as visit other people's island paradises. This provides even more incentive for players to take their islands to the next level, even after the main story path has been completed. The Dondoko Island content is wildly deep and intricate for a side mode, and helps to give players another avenue to express themselves and differentiate their experience from others. Something that I believe is core to the RPG experience. In case it wasn't obvious by now, I had an absolute blast with Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Even if the game was missing all of the content I talked about today, it would still be a rock-solid RPG with a fantastic story and extremely polished mechanics. However, when you add in its wealth, one might even say its infinite wealth of side content, you get something truly special. I think that this is a game that all RPG lovers owe to themselves to check out. Just make sure you put aside enough time to enjoy the hours upon hours of side content on display here. I promise that it's worth it.